Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Audible Farm podcast. I'm your host. My name is Peter Stockdale. On today's episode, we sit down with Marco Battaglia. He is a bassist, probably best known for his work as the bassist in Dark Mirror. Currently, he is the bassist in the Sleepover, and he's also the bassist in Unity. So we are actually bandmates in Unity, and we've known each other for quite a while. We sit down and we talk about a handful of different things. We even get a little bit into his political career. So stick around, enjoy the podcast. Thanks everybody for tuning in. This is episode number 27 with Marco Battaglia.
It's the Audible Farm podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
Sitting down today with Marco, and how would I pronounce your last name?
Battaglia.
Battaglia. So I've often wondered that because I hear different people pronounce it different ways, and I'm always wondering how to pronounce it. So it's Battaglia.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where people that came from a certain region say one thing, and people that are more American say one thing. But Battaglia is always how my family came from northern Italy, so that's how they do it.
You're. Some people might know you through different avenues. I first knew you as a musician, and you had played music as the bassist in Dark Mirror for quite a long time, and that was how I first known you. But how did you get started or get interested in playing music?
For me, that was in the early, let's see, would have been in elementary school. I had a cousin that got married to a guy that played in a band. I think they were, what are they called, like Al's Basement. They're like a Iowa or a regional band. He played saxophone. And at the time, I thought that was pretty cool. When I was a kid, like Billy Joel and Bruce Springsteen were always playing in the background, so I gravitated towards saxophone first.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I was, really young in like 5th grade or something, and just never really felt that comfortable with that sort of instrument and having to blow into it and use my mouth. I mean, I probably also never really got to be able to hold a sweaty towel from Clarence Clemens or anything like that. So maybe if I would have stuck with it, that could have been a cool thing, but I could never make the saxophone as sexy as I thought it needed to be. So rather quickly I switched to bass, and just as far as my memories go, I almost feel like it's been just almost like another appendage since end of 5th grade, 6th grade. Always had really supportive parents, so that was cool, and they got me a starter bass. I think it was a Bentley is what it was called, and yeah, I picked up VHS tapes whenever I was. One cool thing about coming of age in the late 80s and early 90s, I'm sure you can relate to, is when formats changed, you always got the sales from the previous format.
Yeah.
VHS tapes were going out, so you go to the video store and there'd be cool shit galore, like Cliff 'Em All. I got around that time on VHS, and Maiden England, and the Black Sabbath story. So there's live footage of everybody, Ozzy and Ian Gillan and Dio. And so yeah, just seeing Geezer Butler and Cliff play really I was like, yeah, I'm a bass player. There's no doubt about that. And just always, haven't gone very long without, picking it up ever since. That was what really drew me into it. And then around that same year, I sat next to a dude, Eric Wicker, who was the first Dark Mirror guitar player. We played a speed run gig with him, and had a couple of projects with him throughout the years. And I think it was my 5th birthday he got me Master of Puppets, and that pretty much just was the...
Did you say your 5th birthday?
Yeah.
That is awesome.
And then he took lessons from a guitar player who my brother also took lessons from. His name is Michael Curry, and he just gave me a treasure trove of like just things to Yngwie Malmsteen, Alcatraz, Flotsam and Jetsam, Doomsday for the Deceiver. He actually was in an Iowa band called Atomic Opera, which was like a straight on thrash metal. And so that he actually, you know, would show Mick Thompson and Jim Root things, and Jim Root actually replaced him in Atomic Opera for a while. I think he had all kinds of crazy stories. Like he tried out for Poison when he was in L.A.
Oh, damn.
And I think, I want to say, I don't remember who came in right after him. Some really notable guitar player. I know, and I think he passed C.C. DeVille on the way in, so he didn't get the gig. But he was definitely a shredder in his younger days, and now he's a really cool classical guitar player and just a real cool dude in general.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that same guitar shop, the old guitar shop Mick Thompson gave guitar lessons at for a while. He gave my buddy John Feld lessons. So it's been really crazy to see the trajectory of those dudes, and especially the ones that can shred, even if they kind of keep it on the back burner or whatever.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, we're talking about primarily the Des Moines area, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Des Moines and got to go on some regional tours and things like that, but mostly was among the Midwest music scene from kind of the first gigs I started playing. And but yeah, so that was kind of a solid foundation in the thrash metal, because I think back to that epic fifth grade, he got me Master of Puppets for my birthday, and I want to say I think I got him Rest in Peace by Megadeth. So
nice.
It didn't really there hasn't been too much to top those two records ever since for my money. But let's see, another interesting thing that just made me go down that path. I was in a little league baseball with a kid. His name was Nick Young, and his grandmother worked for what was it called? I think it was called Sanctuary Records, whatever label Iron Maiden was on.
No way.
And he was like, this was like after, Little League baseball practice. He was like, "Oh, I know you like metal," because he saw me carrying the Master of Puppets CD. He's like, I'm not really into these guys, but my grandma got like this whole discography of Iron Maiden. Would you want this? And I think I had one like beat up used copy of Fear of the Dark, and that was what I had for Iron Maiden. So I went from having that as like, this 5th grader to having the whole collection, which at that time was the first album through Rock in Rio, I think.
Oh, damn.
No, maybe not. It was actually the first album through the Blaze Bayley albums, because Bruce Dickinson had not quite yet came back. So it was like an epic, like 1-2 punch couple of years, because then after I really dug into the catalog, then they announced Bruce was coming back and Brave New World came out, and this was like AC/DC put out Stiff Upper Lip around that same time, and Pantera reinventing the Steel. So it was like this badass resurgence that was like right, at the right time for me.
Yeah, you're talking about Iron Maiden, and that was one of the things that, like, the way I ended up meeting you was through Clint Blumker, and Clint met you through his girlfriend Kelsey, and I think you guys had gone to school together, maybe.
Yeah, went to the University of Northern Iowa, and that was where I met Kelsey. So the whole Dark Mirror thing, that's, was a decade plus of active rockin', and that started with me and Eric Wicker. So it was a long time in the works from us, like, jamming to trying to play Master of Puppets in our as kids, to kind of always just struggling to find a full lineup of people that played metal. And really we didn't find that until I was at UNI and Eric was at the music school in St. Paul. I think it used to be called like Music Tech, and then McNally Smith, and who knows what it is now.
Yeah.
But I just remember that I had met Kelsey, and we kind of hit it off on similar interests. And then I think she actually showed me a picture that had you in it. I think you and Kevin and Clint.
Yeah, probably.
You played in a group at some point, right?
Yeah, we all grew up with I've done podcasts with all these people for the most part, but yeah, it was Dan Blair, Clint Blumker, Kevin Jensen, and Tom Hanrahan played the bass guitar, and then before Clint, we had another drummer called Jake Short. That was his name.
Yeah, so that was sort of like the first time we didn't actually meet, but I saw a picture of you, and she was like, "Yeah, this is my boyfriend. He's a badass drummer." And I was like, well, things could get interesting there. And
Yep.
and that was kind of that took some time to come together, because I basically, what was going on, I was walking through the hallways at UNI, and over the radio station, I heard the band Blind Guardian playing.
Cool.
And I was like, oh, I'll say what's up to this, whoever's playing this. It was from the student radio station, and the DJ was Alonzo Donoso, who was a student from Chile, and he basically was like, yeah, I'm a vocalist, and that was how we kind of encountered the first person in our history that really had what we thought were the pipes to put out a full-on heavy metal record. So then Eric was in Minnesota. I went to visit him. It happened to be I think it was a couple days after Dimebag Darrell got shot. So like our mood was pretty low and sad, and to some degree eventually celebratory of the career and the good times. And but we were at a Joey Belladonna concert, and I just remember we were like, hey, we've been trying to do this for years now. I think it's time. So he committed to come down, and we started the writing for the first Dark Mirror album. And our drummer at the time was one of my roommates, AJ Austin. He lived above me in the dorms, and it was a crazy time having a guy have a full-on, full drum kit in the dorms who could play, heavy metal.
A full drum kit in a dorm room. That's,
yeah.
That's pretty...
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
And, so that was a great couple gigs there to get right out the gates. Then we had another guy, Tim Cummings, that picked up on drums, who's a beast in his own right.
Oh, yeah.
And basically AJ just wasn't, he didn't have the full-on playing live music bug. So he kind of let us know, eventually you're going to have to find someone if you're going to want to play out in other cities. And so Tim Cummings picked it up and recorded our first EP and our first album with us. And then let's see here.
Yeah, snag up some water. Yeah, that's no big deal. So what's actually pretty crazy about this is I actually got to play with Tim with Unity, we actually did one show together when I joined up with Unity, and it was really great to actually get to play with him because it reminded me of how I had seen him play with Dark Mirror the first time I ever saw Dark Mirror, and it was like, man, that was, 12 years ago or something like that. So, yeah, it's kind of crazy how that all kind of came full circle. I got to actually play a show with him, so that was really cool that I got to do that.
Yeah, no, I always thought that was great that those worlds wound up colliding, and he's a awesome drummer. Like he's, you obviously know, having played with him, that it's something special. It's like playing with Clint.
Yeah,
and it's always really epic when you have someone that can do kind of these fantastical feats of drumming. Sure, as when you're laying down rhythms, you know what that's like to really have someone that can kick it up into a gear where you're like, what the fuck? How is this guy doing this shit?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that's something I will forever be blown away by as drummers, because like I understand rhythms and patterns, but like performing them is ridiculously. It's almost, it seems impossible. Like I can play the drums, but I can play AC/DC. That's like different than playing drums.
Yeah, the double bass theatrics, or even like Nico McBrain does on one bass drum is nuts.
Yes.
But yeah, so eventually there, as it would happen, Tim Cummings hurt his hand in some kind of accident working outside. So that was what brought Clint into the fold, and been playing with them ever since. We actually just finished, we still play, just finished an album with the Sleepover. It's me, Clint, and Emery. So we have one album we did about a year ago called No Sleep, and now we just finished our second album. It's called Pajamas in Public, and that name actually came from, there's a guy who's been in the local Des Moines scene forever, Rob Ogg, and he just saw us out at a gig, and he was like, "What, man? You wearing pajamas? You're in public. Come on now." And it just kind of came from that.
That's actually pretty awesome.
If you go to shows in Des Moines, you've definitely seen Rob do something. For the longest time, he's been in Skin of Earth, and they're loud as hell, boggy as hell, doomy, and he's one of those dudes. There's these certain groups of people that have been around ever since I was old enough to sneak into music venues.
Yeah, I mean, that's another topic we could talk about.
At the time that I was really getting into it, there was Harry Mary's in the Drake neighborhood, and there was House of Bricks, which is at that time was across from Merleham Mall.
Yeah, I remember going to House of Bricks like all the time back in the day.
And so there was a band called Black Market Fetus that was Nate Fetus, Andrew Smeltzer, his brother Nick Smeltzer, and at that time Rob Sanda on drums.
Yeah.
And they're still playing. They wound up crossing paths with the Dark Mirror family and Traffic Death. And they're, to me, one of the most kicking bands going from Des Moines, Traffic Death. And so that has two of the old Black Market Fetus dudes, and in Nate and Andrew on bass. And some of our first shows, when we couldn't find a vocalist or a full-on drummer for the longest time, me and Eric actually made a band that it was kind of taking the piss, just because I am not a vocalist. never had could carry a tune, if you will. I just kind of yelled my ass off in this band called Pud. And so even we were like, it's a funny name, and it was named after Pud Galvin, who was like the first known baseball player to take foreign substances to try to improve his pitching, and I think it was like monkey testosterone or something.
Jesus.
Something taken from monkey testicles or something.
What the heck?
and this, Pud Galvin. Look into that character.
Wonder if that's where the term "don't be a pud" comes from.
I think so, actually. I mean, I would not be surprised. So it was kind of like some weird Alice Cooper inspired story, like I was the reincarnation of this old time baseball player. And then it was just, I'll send you some music of ours. It was just shit we thought was funny mixed with Eric trying to rip it as hard as he could on guitar.
It's like some Stormtroopers of Death kind of stuff.
Definitely, there was definitely a vibe of that. Very much so.
Which shout out to anybody that knows what I'm talking about. It's almost niche, but it's not, because there's a lot of people that actually know what that is.
It's one of those things where in the right crowd, people will go nuts. I mean, that album,
dude.
Stormtroopers of Death. They have two, but the first record,
the first one is super good,
ripping, and Scott Ian, Charlie Benante, Billy Milano, Danny Liker, and. Yeah, nuts. And I think you early on you did a podcast with Eric Tran.
Yep.
And I had been playing with him in an early version of his group Transig, and we actually did one of those songs, just the March of the SOD, Sergeant D. And yeah, they've been still playing that, fucking killing it. And that was fun as hell to play. Like, that's just one of those, like, Scott Ian stomp a mud hole riffs.
Yeah. Oh, I love. Yeah, that's a good one. It's like Scott Ian's stuff can just simply be described as almost exactly how you said it. I just imagine somebody just like jumping around and stomping their feet everywhere. And that's No, I love his guitar playing. Been lucky to see him a number of times now, and another one of those things you'll never forget. I think it was my 19th birthday. Me and Eric saw Anthrax at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake. This was like John Bush. I think it was a We Come For You All tour. Yep.
And they're opening for Ronnie James Dio. And I think Clint was at that.
I didn't end up going to that.
I think Kevin might have been there and Clint.
Yep.
And so that was like the first time I know for sure we were in the same room, but we didn't know each other quite yet.
Yep. I always love figuring that out, where it's like, I went to this show, and they're like, then someone else is like, I went to this town, and I was like, I was at that one,
Yeah, and that's kind of like the network of musicians growing up in this kind of scene. Like the fact that we've crossed paths so many times and played with some of the same people.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, that was one of those epic things where, like I think... Scott Ian commented on our headbanging during Metal Thrashing Mad, and Dio. I actually, someone caught wind that it was my birthday, and someone in the crew gave me passes, and Dio was like really sick, but just the professionalism of that dude was, I couldn't tell whatsoever that he had, like pneumonia, and he just fucking killed it. And then you find out he's sick, so it kind of sucked because, I briefly got to see him, but I got to talk to Rudy Sarzo a lot.
Oh, that's cool.
An awesome bass player.
That's super cool.
And I always remember him from being in Ozzy's group. He always stood out to me on bass. I think he was on, Quiet Riot for some time, and he's been all over the place. Dio and Blue Oyster Cult and shit.
Yeah, totally.
And but yeah, he was just the nicest guy in the world, and like told me all kinds of stories. He told me how Dio played at the Surf Ballroom, like when he was in like a doo-wop group called Dio and the Prophets.
All right.
And it was one of these like doo-wop package tours that would play places like the Surf Ballroom in like the early 60s.
Yeah.
And I think tickets were like $1.50. I remember him telling me that.
That's insanity.
So if you live in Clear Lake, you might have once seen a young Ronnie James Dio belt out some "Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow" or something like
That's
that.
insanity. Like, people might not even know they've seen a gem of a show, and
It's he's definitely I don't think there's any other word you can use but magical about Ronnie James Dio. Just his whole career has been epic, starting out with some awesome doo-wop and then going full on holy diver on you.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, we were talking about like how like the music scene and how we kind of met each other and how everybody kind of knows each other, and how, I mean, I wouldn't say like everybody's been in everybody else's band at one point in time, but there's been like different mishmashes and lineups of, like you said, Dark Mirror was a thing, and then people eventually like would leave Dark Mirror and then they would start their own thing, and then that thing would eventually kind of blow up, and it's just kind of this trickle down effect of this ongoing juggernaut of people that get together to make music, and then from the ashes of one thing comes the flame of another.
Yeah.
So you end up with a lot of that kind of going on, and that's kind of how you and I eventually ended up being bandmates.
In Unity.
And
that has been epic, and the fact that we have multiple, me and Alonzo, and for a while there was Tim and then Clint from Dark Mirror, and Jeremy Hall was in there for a while.
Yeah, they've had quite a few different guitarists over the years. And I mean, I'm just glad I could fill in the gap when they needed me.
It's been awesome.
I mean, it took a lot of work, but it got my chops up. I will have to say that.
It's always interesting, especially like I was playing metal forever, but then the Sleepover is more rock and roll, kind of punk inspired. So it's interesting shifting gears for how different those worlds are, and then obviously there's the stuff that kind of mixes it all up together, like the early Iron Maiden and Motorhead and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was also remembering that. So when I was first going into shows, there was the Mutts. To some extent, they're still around. Matt Mutt, if you haven't done a podcast with him, he'd be a good dude.
Yeah, I should hit him up.
To get on, because we played a Pudge show in Murray, Iowa. You ever heard of Murray?
No, not off the top of my head.
Just a small town, and we played in like a warehouse. And it was just a rager in the middle of nowhere in Iowa, and I'll never forget Matt Mutt for inviting us to that. That was just one of those crazy things that you get trying to play heavy music in Iowa and the Midwest. And the Mutts and Die Mutts, Skin of Earth. Those are some of those dudes are dudes that are still trucking, and Black Market Fetus, which now they have epic Traffic Death. So those are some of the earliest groups that I remember seeing, and it's cool that some of those dudes are still mixing it up.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's not the fact that like the Dark Mirror was the band and everything that came from there was greatness. It's that everybody built their own empire, and they all started doing that with their own bands, because like I said, like bands don't last forever, and it's just the way that it works. But people still want to make music, and they still end up making music, and it's still good, so
yeah, pretty much. If you are not able to be on the road constantly, or to go to a market that's more known for music, it seems like that's kind of what happens. You either keep doing it for the love of the game, and then some people come and go, some people come back, and it's pretty cool, really, especially if you can hear like the different releases that got made at different points in time.
Yeah.
And I think and just it's interesting being a part of venues that aren't around anymore, like House of Bricks at multiple locations, Harry Mary's, the Reverb. I worked at the Reverb for a while, and we played a lot of Dark Mirror shows there. Some of our best shows.
I went to a few shows there. Upstairs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we played with Overkill there. And
Oh,
that was
sweet.
just full on ridiculous. Like, it was one of those shows that made me feel good that we could like be on the same stage as Overkill without it just being completely ridiculous.
Yeah, without it being like, why are these guys here?
Yeah, so that was like a milestone, really.
Yeah,
it was like we actually like didn't look like dumbasses.
Yeah, and that's another good feeling though, because like people tend to sell you upriver, but a lot of these bands that like we listen to, and you're like, oh, I'm in a band, and they're like, oh, well, where do you play? And I play for it's like, who'd you open? You can play any cool shows. I played with these guys, and people are like, I don't know who that is, but you and I know who Overkill is, and that's friggin' cool. And when you come, you want to bring it. You want to bring your A game.
They come to shred anywhere, and that's like if you watch them play in a concert, to a sea of people, and then you live that Cedar Falls Reverb show, like they bring the same thunder. And that is something I've just always respected. Like, this band that can make, sea of rabid metal fans go nuts will play just as hard at a small club, and just seem like they're loving it. And and they had this their own attitude, like being from New Jersey. Like a lot of people might not take it the right way. Like I was the kid who went up and gave him like our album after we played with them to Bobby Blitz, and singer of Overkill, and I just remember he was just like, hey, thanks kid, I'll use it as a coaster. And like, some people might be like, what the fuck, man, but I just thought it was fucking hilarious.
That's awesome.
And even if he did, I mean, that's probably a more interesting story than, hey, he liked it and he listened to it sometimes, and no, he used it as a coaster.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be friggin' sweet if they're on the tour bus and it's like it's one of their coasters. Or like, how cool would it be to have just like all of your coasters are metal bands trying to make it, and then like that'd be a pretty cool thing to actually do. I mean, it's kind of disheartening, but it's pretty cool
funny.
too.
It's just funny, just the time that we were coming up. I was with Clint, and we had a situation like that with Halloween. We saw Halloween in Gamma Ray, and they were like, we convinced them to like play one of our songs before they went on. Like they were like, oh, we don't really have room for an opening band, but we'll play one of your songs, and that was cool. And Michael Wyke just hit me with one of those comments. He was like, we gave him one of our records from Dark Mirror. He was like, just my advice to you: grow up and make a new album. And it was kind of profound advice, really. Like it's what you do.
Yeah.
Grow up, and they're still growing up and making new albums themselves.
Yeah. So we were talking about like how there's just all these different little communities in the music scene out here in the Des Moines area. I mean, it's that way in a lot of areas. Some smaller areas don't have multiple scenes just due to what's going on, but one of those things that I've always found you being very good at, and I've tried to take your lead in this, and that's supporting everybody. You've always been pretty good about that. You're one of the nicest guys I think I've met in the music scene. I almost never have heard a bad word about anything ever out of your mouth. Like that's how positive you are.
Well, all shucks. You'll ruin my heavy metal credibility.
Oh man, no, sorry. I'm so sorry. I mean, he's such a badass. No,
fuck you, man. No, that's awesome. I mean, I can't complain about that reputation, but it's just too small of a market and a scene to like really play a lot of those click games and shit like that. And I mean, I love heavy metal, and it's always kind of been known for this kind of air of who's more metal or whatever, but I thought, let the music do the talking, to use a cliche, and just put out the best metal you can. And people, especially in heavy metal, people don't, they can see through the bullshit a lot of the time. So you just let that do the talking, and then there's no reason to really be a dick to someone that thinks, a different sound is cool. And that's always been part of it. And kind of that same attitude after you have experience and you feel confident about what you're doing.
Exactly.
If someone wants to try to hang with you, like, that's on them, basically.
Yep.
like, oh, you want to play with a band that tries to work hard and be polished, and it's either you're gonna look foolish or you're gonna keep getting better yourself.
Exactly.
And I've seen that happen a lot.
Oh, yeah.
A band, I just, especially being in security, it wasn't shows I was paying to go see. You see this band and it's like, God damn, that was fucking terrible. But then they stick at it. Maybe they have like a member change or whatever. They practice, go to the woodshed, and then they put out an album, and you're like, God damn, this is the same dudes. Like,
yeah.
This is the same people.
Well, we've all definitely had those shows where you show up and you're just like, everybody's high-fiving before the show starts. You're like, this is going to be so cool. Everyone's going to love us when we're done with this. And then you show up to play, and you're like, dude, we fucking sucked. And like, that's what I remember my first time playing. It wasn't horrible, but it still wasn't great. And people were kind of just like laughing at us, and you could hear it on the recording. And it's like, oh, this is neat, and that was like back in high school. But like, I think everybody goes through one of those and doesn't want to ever do it again. So sometimes I just think like it's sometimes a situation that shows up, and I always give any band the benefit of the doubt, even if I don't necessarily enjoy something, because it's not it's not made for me. That's like another thing I keep thinking, like, oh, if they're making this for someone, it probably wasn't me, and that's unfortunate, because I want to like everything, and I do. That's the other thing too, though, is going places and putting your music out there in front of somebody else. It helps you appreciate, exactly like you said, all the work that somebody else is putting into doing the thing that they're doing. Yeah,
I mean, shit. Some nights just carrying the gear to the stage is work.
Yeah, dude, I feel that.
And that's why, I have a lot of respect for people that I see still doing it. Like, recently saw Doyle from the Misfits. Like, dude carries his own gear, and, some people think he's a dick, but I think they just don't get, his sense of humor, because I think he's hilarious, fucking hilarious. And just the fact that he'll still play a small club like the Vaudeville Muse, and, carry his own gear. And Jerry Only I saw do that, his brother in the Misfits. And just like seeing people that are basically household names that still have that kind of vibe, that mentality of like, yeah, we'll play with your fucking band, and we'll carry our own gear and whatever, we'll sound check with just like the way you do. We don't need the special rock star treatment. And so that was kind of where I got that from, I think, was just some of my heroes, like especially like Jerry Only, and that was one that really stood out, just seeing a dude like having a young punk band opening for him, and at the same time carrying his own gear, and then going from like being a teenager playing like a wave of music, and then being like, so could be a grandpa, and he's playing to like 12-year-olds now. So, so it's like, some people might not like that, but I appreciate it, at least, to a certain degree, for what it is. And it is one of those things, like, there's so many pros and cons to like being from a place like Des Moines, Iowa, and making a home here and still playing music. Like, especially with heavy metal, I really feel like you get back like what you put into it. Like, we've had so many cool experiences, like playing with Diamond Head and Ross the Boss. Ross the Boss from Manowar. Like, we really hit it off, and like we're friends to this day, and we shoot the shit. And there was this song that I really love, Shell Shock, from the first Manowar record, and because I told him that, he put it in the set, and that was just such a cool little thing, like, to just come back to you. one of my favorite live bands of all time was Nevermore, and we were supposed to play with those dudes right before they broke up.
Jeff Loomis?
Jeff Loomis was in the band, and Warl Dane on vocals.
And Jeff Loomis was like somewhat known for having tried out for, was it Metallica? Or, no, it was Megadeth when he was super, super young, though, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was like 15 or something. I want to say there's 16.
A video of him playing like Tornado of Souls or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was something from Symphony of Destruction, Countdown to Extinction.
I just remember when I was younger, I was like, "What is going on here? This guy is nuts."
Yeah, that would have been and would still be an interesting combination for sure.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and I think everybody that's really played in the scene a long time has had those experiences. Like you guys have gotten to, you and us together have gotten to play with some badass groups.
Oh yeah,
and
like
Shrike, right?
Yeah, actually, that I went to go see you guys play Unity play with Queensryche once.
And
no, yeah, was it? No, it was.
It was before we were in the group, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think I was just in the audience with you.
Was that at Woolies here in town?
Yeah, that sounds right.
All right, I believe that happened.
Something like that.
Yeah,
and then.
I saw Unity also open up for Fozzy and Saxon.
Fozzy, yeah, Saxon, I mean, hell yeah.
But I joined up with Unity. We got to open up for Stryker.
Yeah,
dude, that blew my mind. I knew that was gonna be good, and then you show up and they just like bring the thunder, and all they had was like 4 wash lights and a smoke machine, and that's all they had for effects, and it was insanely good.
It was like the polish of like Richie Sambora with like the shred of George Lynch.
Dude, it was
like something.
It was so good,
and you could tell it was just their playing, like that made it stand out. It wasn't like, a crazy ass stage show. They just loved it and got into it, and
that was hella good.
Yeah, those guys, Skullfist.
We opened up for
killing it.
Opened up for Vicious Rumors recently.
Oh yeah,
that was freaking sweet.
Yeah, Clint's gonna be supporting Pentagram with Thorhammer.
Oh yeah.
And that is crazy. Like about a decade ago or so now, me and Clint were at a Pentagram show at the Vaudeville Muse and hanging out with Bobby Liebling, and that was surreal experience. Like such a crazy motherfucker.
And that's the other cool thing though, is like a lot of these bands are actually, they're not like untouchable people. You go to the show and you set your stuff up, and you get to like interact with them, and
especially in metal, and punk, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad, but it's always an experience. I don't even really mind, I've just been one of those dudes that, like, I guess I'm pretty easygoing, but like people that get known as being, a dickbag or whatever, like for some reason it doesn't usually faze me. Like I really like Danzig still, and Yngwie Malmsteen. It's like, I mean, some of that comes with the fucking package, take it or leave it. Like, you don't have to like him, but I get it. You should be a good person, and
Malmsteen's just like mean to everyone, wears Rolexes, drives Lamborghinis. When I went to go see the Generation X tour, everybody had a small stack on stage, and then Malmsteen had 16 stacks. And so like that's just the kind of guy Malmsteen is. And I find it entertaining though too. It's like a caricature of themselves. It's like them blown out of proportion on a grand scheme.
Maybe if I had to deal with that, like I was like a roadie, or like I had to be responsible for it or around it or in a band with them, maybe I'd have a different opinion on that. But it's just like some of it, it's like they're, it precedes them. Like Dave Mustaine, like I'm sure he's not always a fucking dick, or maybe he is, but
I love watching old interviews with Dave Mustaine.
And he's
like, I want to tell you something because this is the way it's supposed to be, and it's like, whoa, okay,
like. And there is something to be said for when you put something amazing out there, like you can't ever take Rust in Peace away from him, and And does that give you a pass to be a dick? Maybe not, but it's better than like putting out, trash and then being a dick to people.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, you brought joy to many people just by having done this.
Yeah.
So whatever, man. Maybe if you don't like him, just stay out of his way.
Yeah, that's usually what I think about a lot of things. It's like, if you don't like this, just don't even talk about it. Just don't worry about it.
Yeah,
just let it go.
There's too much
Just let it
energy
go away.
wasted in worrying about things you don't like. Like, there's too much good shit.
Yeah, I was actually discussing this earlier today with somebody, how that just seems like there's no such publicity as bad publicity. As a matter of fact, if people talk poorly about something, it gets blown out of proportion so bad that everybody knows about it.
Yeah, and
then
you'll give shitty websites clickbait for like decades.
Yeah.
Like, how many stories do you need about Nickelback or Imagine Dragons or Corey Taylor or them feuding with each other, like calling each other pieces of shit?
Yeah.
It's like who? I don't know.
And I'm not trying to call anyone out, but like blabbermouth.net would be a good place to go. Like, I follow them on everything, and it's just like,
there's a
Corey
lot
Taylor
of that.
says this, and
There's
it's like,
a lot
dude,
of that.
doesn't matter that somebody said that.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and it seems like they have their own drama now, like some kind of lawsuit, and
I feel like a lot of that gets blown out of proportion too, because I feel like almost like that's isolated incidents of things that almost never happen, and people just like tag them on as stories, and it's just like, this happened.
Plus, if you're now one of the biggest bands in the world, I went to the Coliseum and saw multiple people wearing Slipknot shirts just on a casual hanging out in the Coliseum.
That's crazy.
And so, like, when you're a global phenomenon, I think you're probably going to work out some differences, most likely, unless you just completely hate each other. I don't know.
Yeah. So, you playing in the Sleepover and me playing in Three Finger Betty has kind of led us to get to know each other a little bit better, I would say. Like, we were always really friendly with each other. I always loved seeing you. You'd always either give me a huge handshake or a big old hug or something every time I saw you. And it was always pretty awesome. And then, I just got used to seeing you at shows because I'd be in Des Moines a lot more often, the last few years, watching shows and things like that.
It's been awesome.
And, recently we became band members and stuff like that. But do you know, like, a direct lineage of all of the bands you've been in over time, or do you have, like, a rough estimate?
Yeah, to some. So I guess the first time I remember was seeing that picture that Kelsey showed me at UNI, and you were in it.
Yep.
And then shortly after that, running into you at a Dark Mirror show.
Yep.
And that's my earliest memories of us crossing paths. But so with two of my best buds, John Feld and George Thompson, we had put metal and punk and who knows what else in a blender thing that we tried to do. I remember this was like right when there was like Megadeth, Risk, and System of a Down, Sugar came out, and right around that time, and we had kind of that same problem, could never find like a full lineup of people.
Yeah.
But I think that would have been really interesting because they're interesting dudes. Like George was more of like a professional vocalist, like singing in choir and stuff like that, and just a lot of things that never got off the ground, just because of not finding a full group of dudes.
Yeah.
And we didn't even play when me and Eric were looking for people, it didn't matter. Like, we didn't care what age dudes were or anything. Like, we had this one drummer named Rich that was like straight up like Spirit of Cozy Powell, like,
what's it?
Awesome drummer.
Yeah.
And so we would play like Crazy Train with him, and he'd just nail it, and that was always awesome. And we had this guy named Mike Bates on vocals, and he was just a straight up like Savatage, John Oliva,
crazy,
Dio style. Like he was just one of those types of dudes, and had really long hair, and it was just a dude that was still carrying the flame. And even though we were like kids, so there was like a lot of epic like basement jams that we thought sounded fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And then the Dark Mirror, finally we decided to cut the shit and get serious after Dimebag got capped. And then, well, okay, prior to that we had the PUD group where we did have some pretty notable gigs. I think we played at like Johnston High School and played at like one of those weird private membership buildings where they like have pancake breakfasts and shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there was shit like that. And then we played with a group I think called Place of Skulls once, which had someone epic in there. I think it was a longtime Pentagram guitar player. And let's see, what really... Dark Mirror was like really the main vehicle for the longest time. Kind of was there like when the groundwork was laid for a couple different groups. Dogs of Neptune, which had a bunch of dudes from this scene.
Yep.
Jared Embry's fucking awesome guitar player, and Dan Spain on fucking drums, amazing drummer. And I always just kind of was committed to Dark Mirror to a certain degree. So I always was kind of like the starter guy for a lot of other projects. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I don't think I'll really be able to, like, you know, tour and play out of the state and whatnot, and but I'll like help you out. Well, Dark Mirror's still trucking.
Yep.
And so there was that, and then the Transig thing was kind of just kicking it at some of their early practices.
Yeah.
And then, which also awesome dudes. It was awesome to just even jam it, not on stage. And then Clint had his speed run thing that he's still got trying to go out there. So if you want to play some badass video game music, hit Clint Blomker up.
Oh yeah.
And so we wound up helping him out with a gig in Austin, Texas at the Classic Video Game Festival. So we played like Battletoads music and F-Zero music and all kinds of awesome shit. And that was a really cool gig. There were some other bands, but I really felt good about what we brought to the table at that event. And so that was awesome to play with me, Eric, and Clint as a three-piece.
Yeah.
And or actually no, and Edgar. And he didn't get to go on that trip, but he was still rocking with Clint, I think, until right before that.
Yeah.
And then what else happened in there? Oh, the Sleepover got to play in Austin on that trip, which was cool. At the
that's
Mohawk,
pretty cool too.
Badass venue. And Sleepover's gotten to do some cool shit. Played at the Iowa State Fair, got to play live on Iowa Public Radio, which was pretty cool.
Both of those are sweet accomplishments.
And yeah, and now I feel really good about the second album, so happy to get that out there. And but yeah, so that's the for well over a decade, it was Dark Mirror was kind of my thing. And there's still, we still talk about what we can do and still write. It's just like once you've kind of had so many plateaus, if you're going to do something, you want to do it right. So if those stars align and we feel like we can do it right, I don't think anybody rules it out. It's just like, can life work it out?
Exactly. Yeah. So you've been in quite a few bands over the years, and you've accomplished quite a bit, it sounds like, doing all that with all those bands. I mean, you've gotten a decent amount of exposure with the Dark Mirror, and you've helped a lot of bands kind of help them out in a starting spot, in a sense, filling in the bass roles and sometimes leaving. You've recorded a lot of albums, it sounds like. I mean, you've put your time in, and it shows. I mean, I've always seen you down here at shows. I mean, like you said, it's been about a decade now. I mean, you and I've. It's not like we've been doing it hand in hand, clowning around town. But at the same time, like, I see you at shows. It's fun to, like, I'm at a show. I'm just kind of standing there, and then all of a sudden somebody smacks me on the back, and I turn around, it's you, and it's like, yes, all right, Marco's
it's
here.
one of those things where I think that's almost what it has to be like in this, where it's a struggle for even a household name to, like, make money on a tour. If you are just a fan of music, then like it's gonna come back to you in some way. Like either an awesome show, finding a new band, making new friends, seeing old friends. Eventually, no matter where you live, it seems like someone epic's gonna come. Within driving distance. Within transport of where you're at, like. Seeing the gas lamp. What was that show that it was
The Unity show
that came to the gas lamp.
As we talking the Unity show? That was Vicious Rumors.
Vicious Rumors coming to the gas lamp was nuts. And that's like the gift that keeps on giving, just having experiences like that.
Yeah, you get to actually open up for them, and then you get to enjoy watching them play, and that kind of stuff just blows my mind. And even just the fact that you can have bands like that come through town. Like, I remember going to see the Travis Larson band in town, and that's not like a hugely popular band by any stretch of the imagination, but I absolutely love them. And it's just people shredding on instruments, whether it be bass, drums, or guitar. And it's
I think that's another thing is, like, when someone shreds, they shred, and respecting other types of music definitely helps. Like, I love Eric Sardinas. He hasn't been here in a while, but for a while it was like a regular stop.
Yeah, it was like almost every year, every other year he'd be here.
Yeah, that dude, was keeping the Delta blues.
I loved seeing him live. Like, me and Clint went to a Steve Vai show when we were still in high school.
Yeah.
And he opened up for Steve Vai on tour, and it was just like, what? Like, I couldn't believe what was happening. That was back when he still used to light his guitar on fire.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, he'd light his guitar on fire and put it out with a beer bottle. It was friggin' nuts.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome when dudes like that can get along, and it also is kind of funny sometimes when they don't. Like, I saw recently Joe Bonamassa and Richie Faulkner from Judas Priest were, like, getting some back and forth going, and it was kind of funny. Like, when it's both people that can play, it's kind of interesting, like, just seeing how it plays out.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's another thing I like to think about is you're like me, where you've tried to play a handful of different styles over the years. For example, like, you're in Unity and Sleepover currently, and I'm in Unity and Three Finger Betty. So we both have, like, the punk to
punk to metal
switch,
which
rock
is and roll to metal.
It's not always an easy switch to switch on and off, and
and
it makes you kind of think about everybody's different playing style. And like, blues is a completely different beast, even though it's not super hard to play all the time, but it's still different, and
yeah, I feel like it's really hard to play a blues set that is gonna blow people away. Like,
yeah.
It's easy maybe to just pick up and, like, jam, but people will get tired of what you're doing. But to really, like, just, like, make people pay attention and be like, God damn,
yeah,
that was some fucking blues,
Yeah, it's
no shit, man, no shit, Chet.
I'm totally with you. But yeah, it's just weird. Not always easy to flip that switch, and it's kind of funny when you are a musician, you understand things where you're growing up, and it's just like, man, I love people that can shred, and people are like, listen to Rage Against the Machine. He's like, Tom Morello can't shred, but then you go out there and you get all the things Tom Morello has at his disposal, and you try to sound like he does, and you're like, how in the hell is he doing this?
Yeah,
so he's a genius in his own right.
And and that's the other thing, just like it goes hand in hand with. I think the reason that I can just go to a live show and oftentimes pick up something cool is probably being a bass player, and anytime you're part of the rhythm, it's like there can be something there's treasure to be found.
Oh yeah.
Like, I took a course on Motown bass playing, and there's like so many amazing, like, to this day nothing's been on the radio where bass is like in the forefront. Like sometimes the main riff, main melody of a song,
Yep.
where it's loud and up front, and oftentimes it was like studio guys just kicking it live, and sometimes stuff they just learned on the spot and shit.
Yep.
And that to me is still, like, as far as what's been played on terrestrial radio, some of the most epic shit as far as, coming from the bass.
Yeah.
And
I look at the bass guitar a lot like the engine in a car. The real people who know cars know to flip open the hood and look inside, but everyone else is just like, that Lamborghini looks so sweet, and it's just like, this car's cool shaped and cool colored, and I want that thing. You know? So people don't actually know, like, oh, if you open up the hood, you know how awesome this car actually is. And so the bass is like the engine, it actually makes the car go. It's not the outer shell. It's not always about the flashy guitar and stuff like that. Because I'll tell you what, if something doesn't have a good bass beat or a good groove to it, or like the bass and drums don't line up just right to make that special sound that needs to happen, the song just doesn't quite feel quite right.
Plus, like listen to Geezer Butler talk, or Steve Harris, or like when Cliff Burton did interviews, he liked like Peter Gabriel, and they liked like Tony Levin, and Cliff even mentioned being into like REM and shit. And like I always thought, that to me is more interesting, people that come out and make an epic heavy metal album that, drew inspiration from all these different places.
Yes.
Versus just, you don't just, necessarily wake up and eat a bowl of heavy metals.
Yeah, exactly. Not everything has to be a big punchy in the mouth kind of a song from start to finish, and that's just one of the things about music. I think you and I are on the same exact page. Is once you start playing it, and once you start making it, you really start appreciating what everybody else is putting into what they're doing, and what their inspirations were, and how it got them to where they're at. Yeah, that's kind of what this whole podcast is actually about.
Yeah,
really.
And I don't hate it when it happens. Like Overkill's been basically doing that every, solid fucking albums every couple years of their existence, and they're still doing it. And sometimes people will do, like, Slayer puts out Rain and Blood, and I don't think anybody's gonna get angry at that.
Yeah.
If you can get away with that, then go for it, man.
Well, I think we're getting pretty close to an hour. We've given a lot of shout outs and talked about a lot of bands and a lot of your endeavors, and I don't even think we've, really scratched everything we can.
Probably got sidetracked a bit, but we can always kickstart it back up.
Heck yeah. I mean, you've been really busy as of late, not just even as a musician. And I don't know if you want to talk about that. Maybe just
I'm comfortable talking about it.
Talk about it a little bit. Maybe we can pick it back up in the next one.
Yeah, in the last year, I ran for political office and was in the primary for governor of Iowa, and then got nominated to be an attorney general candidate on the ballot in the general election the last time around. Got hundreds of thousands of votes.
Yep.
It was it was just one of these things where it's not so much liking politics as seeing it all around me and not seeing people speak to so many things that I thought were important.
Yeah.
And almost like just wanting to know, like, you can do it without taking bribes and, getting into all the bullshit that
exactly
is, that politics has become. It's like, I really was proud of what came of it so far, and it was a big thing. Was I was just gonna go into it and be myself and not really filter anything or change anything.
I think you did a really good job of that.
Yeah, and
I don't think
just feeling that got like endorsements from people that were mayors and governors. and that was pretty cool. Like they would read my platform and say like, yeah, this is things that we need right now, and got to raise a lot of money for a mental health clubhouse model of mental health care. There's a really awesome place called Passageway in Des Moines. They'll give you a tour sometime, or if you need a place to go, they're there.
Yeah.
Raise some money so homeless shelters don't turn people away in these brutal winter days, and helped fund a film called Grid Shock that's coming out in a couple months on what's going on as far as human trafficking that's actively going on in Iowa, and it's about how we can kind of end that demand and so people actually know what to look for and how to report it, and also some awareness on so victims don't become made into criminals and get victimized all over again and that sort of thing. So it's been kind of a rude awakening in some ways when you're sort of like someone that didn't necessarily like politics but kind of watched from afar, and then you try to make some change and raise some awareness, and then you look under the hood and you see like, whoa, maybe things are more corrupt than even you think.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's this really weird oppressive regressive system of like everybody gets pitted against everybody and everybody's like a little dirty, so who's the bad guy? Then you like meet someone and you're like, well, I thought this guy was fucking Satan, but he's not that bad. So like, what is going on here for real?
Exactly.
And it's like just a system that's built to turn people against each other, and everyone gets a little dirty, so you don't know who do you want to take down. It's just like the whole house of cards needs to come down, and I think it is coming down. There's just, I thought maybe I could be one of many people running to kind of like try to have your hands clean as best as possible and be like a little parachute, so when this shit does fall down, there's programs that people actually need that are helping people getting away from the war on drugs and making criminals out of people that aren't violent, and just taking some problems and actually trying to find solutions rather than
just straight out punishing. Punishing somebody and perpetuating the issue.
Put fuel on the fire, and I felt accomplished and managed to avoid, I think, a lot of the pitfalls and the nastiness.
Yeah, I think you did a very good job of not misrepresenting you for yourself and who you exactly are. And exactly like you said, I didn't see you change in any way. I didn't see you become a different person after you became a politician. And I'm not saying politicians all change when they become a politician, but it wasn't like a business venture for you. It wasn't something where you had people pay you money to be your constituent, to say what they wanted.
You see that a lot, and someday you're not going to have to do that shit to win. And I was just happy to be like a part of that, if nothing else, a stepping stone to when that time comes.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem like an impossibility. Because, the fact that I knew you and you were going through all this and talking about all the voting and all of my friends were talking about it kind of raised us to actually see, how many people there are actually out there that don't necessarily agree with just a two-party system, or just the generic idea that this is what's politically correct and we've always done it this way, so we should just keep doing it this way or whatever,
Yeah, and I've never been one to really be like against someone who's like, I don't want to participate, I want no part of it. Like, I get that mentality, and I think that's what's most important is what you do. What you do with what you earn, how you treat other people, like that goes so much further than a lot of political bullshit.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like, I felt like there was a lot of people either that went completely unrepresented or certainly misunderrepresented, and it was like, I get, the people that think you should participate, and I get the people that don't want to. And I just think you don't, if someone wants to disassociate from the system as much as possible, that is a-okay with me. I didn't go to those people and beg them to participate. I just wanted to be a voice for, all these independent people that we agree on a lot of things, and we just don't see those things happening yet. And I think a lot of the dominoes are falling, and it's just weird, if you never see anyone like you participating, like, why would you want to participate? So that was part of the reason why I did it, because if there was no one that I could look up to, then try to be one of those people.
Yeah, that's a weird thing to try to find your place to fit in politics, when you agree with some things on the left, some things on the right, but you also agree with a whole pile of things that don't agree with either side. And it's tough to find your spot to fit in.
Yeah.
And you kind of just gave some of those people a voice, some of those people that didn't feel like they had a place to fit in, you gave them a voice.
Yeah, I felt like, to some degree, what they tried to make the Hyde character on that 70s show, like, get that guy to run sometime because he's actually smart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
like come on, man. Like, if you're gonna think critically about 10 things that are directly facing people in Des Moines or anywhere in Iowa, anywhere really that you live, like, you're not gonna fit into any kind of box. And increasingly, I like to think we're not going to either, as a political combination of people or as a country. So yeah, it was more just like an experiment / if you don't see somebody speaking to these issues, be the person. I encourage other people to do it. I mean, it's not without risk to sticking your neck out there, and people are gonna, some people are gonna hate you.
Yeah, it's
just for saying something.
It's the nature of the beast that comes with it.
Some people will really like you, and maybe they're like people that you don't appreciate or you don't like. It's kind of a trip. Like, it does make for strange bedfellows. Like, oh, I never, really like that guy, and he's a diehard supporter.
Yeah,
or whatever.
exactly.
But I think if your heart's in the right place and you can do it, you should. And the flip side, I get it. If you really try to stay out of it, I don't blame you either, because it is a mess. I guess I just always came from that perspective that what you do as an individual carries a lot more weight than a lot of people think.
Yes.
And even if that's just, how you treat people, your neighbors, your community, if you give back when you can, it doesn't have to be money. Volunteer at, the mental health facility or the homeless shelter, and actually get out and get to know people instead of just the mean comments on the internet and shit like that.
Yes. People are not always what they seem online. It's not always that.
Or get to know the people that can't afford, smartphones and an internet connection. Get to know these other people that you share your city with.
Exactly. Well, we've gone past an hour by ways, but this has been a great show so far. I still feel like we haven't quite touched on every single thing that happened.
Yeah,
so
we can always do a part 2 sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to bring you back another time. So thank you very much for just joining me on this podcast episode. And
totally, it's been awesome. I'm glad we finally made it work.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of been talking about it for a while, but like we were talking about, you've been pretty busy as of the last year. So
and check out the archive. You've had so many awesome people on from the different scenes in Iowa. It's been been a trip.
Yeah, I hope to just keep expanding it further and further and further, because I recently did a podcast with a comedian. So it's, I'm looking just for anybody out there that's an entertainer, that's talented, that wants to just talk with somebody about what's going on.
The comedy scene, you'll get all kinds of stories too, because it's that same experience being in a smaller market. And if you're really dedicated to comedy, I look at that,
Yeah.
Brian Posehn talks about how, so how similar it is to, how similar it is to performing, no matter what, you're holding an instrument or holding a mic or whatever.
It seems like almost every performance art goes, I was going to say, they almost all seem to go through the exact same struggles.
Yeah, that's another one we didn't get into, both huge pro wrestling fans.
Yeah, totally. So, I guess we got plenty of topics for part 2 that may or may not come out here soon, but we do need to sit down again and do another episode, because you did say you got a new episode coming out with the Sleepover.
Yeah, a new record and Pajamas in Public, and we'll get it out to the people soon.
Hey, if anybody wants to listen to you on Sleepover or find any of your music for any of the bands, where's the best place?
Sleepover, Bandcamp. We've been supporters of that whole venture. So Dark Mirror is on that. Quite a bit of stuff on the YouTube. Me and Eric actually do some riffing on just hashtag heavy radio. And really those are the best ways. Just put in Dark Mirror YouTube, Dark Mirror Bandcamp, or the Sleepover, same diff.
All right, I know most of those links, so I'll slap information for you in the Sleepover down below. I'll put the Unity information down below. I'll put the Dark Mirror information down below.
Yeah, I'll send you some goofy ass pud shit too.
Yeah, if you want, send it over. I'll put it all down below, and if you want to send me your personal page on Facebook or something like that, I can definitely share that for you too.
Always happy to shoot the shit.
Yeah, so thanks again. Super appreciate it. It's been Marco Battaglia.
Hell
right?
yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Nailed it. All right, we'll see you.
Hell yeah.
Hey, that was another great episode. And I want to thank Marco first and foremost for joining me on the podcast. And I think I might have dropped my first F-bomb in that episode. I was running back through it. I don't know if anybody heard it, but I guess that's why I label these as explicit, just in case anything like that slips. So sorry if I offended anyone, but that happens sometimes. So that was a great episode, though. I like sitting down talking to Marco. He had a lot of great things to say, so we always have great conversations. I figured we should just sit down and actually record one together. And unfortunately, we couldn't cover everything in a whole hour, so I'll probably bring him back and we'll talk again with him pretty soon on another episode, because we barely scratched the surface. We kind of just talked about the music he likes and the places he's been thus far. And like I said, we barely scratched the surface. So maybe we'll talk about a little bit more in the next podcast with him. And I'm looking forward to having another conversation with him. And I'm looking forward to the next episode too, because it's going to be a great one too. So thanks everybody for joining me on this episode. And I hope you guys all enjoy the next episode as much as you enjoyed this one. So thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time. Thanks. Peace.